Welcome, everybody. This is the Reality Czars podcast, and I'm your only host tonight, Nate. I don't know what the fuck Tony's doing. I think he's at work. We're back on YouTube after a 2-week ban, I think, something like that. Something fun. And we're going to go hard, so let's get banned again. I've got Jeremy on from the Esoteric Gladiator podcast. Jeremy, this has been a long time in the making. We talked probably almost like a year ago, man. I'm glad we finally hooked up again. And why don't you tell my audience, since this is the first time you've been on, a little bit about yourself and where they can find you.
Well, my name's Jeremy Lipsy. I'm a tattoo artist by trade. Also did a lot of organic farming in Hawaii. I used to do construction and help build houses. And I have the Esoteric Gladiator podcast. I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm in basically the 80s and 90s. I'm 46 years old. And I've lived a wild life. And yeah,
I think that's what we're talking about tonight. Your wild life.
Yeah. So should I just tell you a little bit about what everything?
Sure, man. Yeah, let's just have a fun conversation.
All right. So, yeah, I was born in Glendale, California in 1976 on January 9th. I'm a Capricorn. For those of you that are into astrology, I certainly am.
I don't know enough about it to be interested in it, to be honest.
When's your birthday?
September 1st. I'm a Virgo.
Is that oh, you're Virgo. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're both earth signs. Usually I get along really well with Virgos. Yeah, my dad was he's a carpenter, construction worker. He worked for the motion picture industry.
Uh-oh, we lost you for a second.
You there?
I'm there. Yeah, sorry about that. We lost it for a second. Okay. You said your dad worked for the motion picture industry, and then went blank.
Give me 1 second.
Okay. No worries.
Make sure that these... Because I set the alarm for the podcast. I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I just turned off the alarms on my phone too. Because that happens a lot.
So, yeah, my daddy worked for the motion picture industry. And he was he's an alcoholic. And he'd like to do blow and mushrooms and smoke weed all the time. So I grew up like watching him smoke a lot of weed. And he worked a lot. He's one of the hardest working dudes I knew, and I got to walk on pretty much all back in the day. You could go on the movie lots, back in the 80s and 90s before 9/11, and I got to walk on all.
Did you find the moon landing?
No, I didn't, but I know a lot about that. When I was, I want to say I was about 7 or 8, he worked on Return of the Jedi. And was out in first he went to the Redwoods and they built the Ewok forest.
That's my hometown, man, where they filmed that. Yeah, well, nearby. I'm from Humboldt County.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been to Humboldt, Emerald Triangle. And he then went to Yuma, Arizona and built Jabba's barge. And he was the guy that designed like the railing on the barge. My dad, even though he partied, he's like me. He's a very intricate artist. If you look at my tattoos, I feel like a lot of my creativity, even though it's a totally different art form, it came from the way my father does it. Because he's also really incredible welder. He worked on transformers, did all kinds of welding shit.
The next time you come up through Oregon, man, I'd love to get a tattoo from you.
Yeah, man, I was just out there not too long ago too. So I got to walk on Jabba's barge when I was a little kid, and that was really
Were you the coolest kid in school? Did you
tell
I was your friends?
I actually was never a cool kid. I fought a lot of bullies. I say I feel like I didn't really become cool till I was in jail for a really long time too, until after I got out of jail and started tattooing. And now it's not even that I feel like I'm cool. I just have a really cool job. I'm really lucky. and I just get to do a lot of cool shit. But
Dude, being a tattoo artist sounds like the dream. Honestly, it sounds like like you get to do art, and you kind of get to work and make your own schedule. You get to like, there's so many like cool aspects of that. You're basically your own boss.
Kinda. You got to work your way up through the ranks.
Yeah,
It's like anything. Um, but I got, I got to go on, and I always said like, oh, I'm an actual Jedi Knight because I got to walk on Jabba's barge and shit. Uh, but my childhood was like, my dad, he did his best. He provided for the family. We lived in Burbank on the border of North Hollywood, so there was a lot of gang activity around us. And so most of my friends growing up were like skateboarders and gangbangers and taggers. And my dad, like I said, he did his best, but he's a drunk construction worker. So it was a very tumultuous upbringing, if you will, right? And I did good in school till about fourth grade, and then I just stopped caring about school because the home life was a little bit rough and rugged, and uh, so I think that I just kind of tuned out and I couldn't focus anymore. And by fourth grade, I was getting D's, and by fifth grade, I was getting F's, and then by eighth grade, I'd pretty much given up on school because I measured it like I'm an artist. Like I always wanted to do art, and you weren't really allowed to do art in school unless it was like some bullshit controlled, you got to make a fucking mission for the Catholic Church or,
I actually enjoyed that. I liked
I
making the
did
mission. That
too.
was
I did too. But, and now after traveling and seeing a
only
lot of,
California kids will know what we're talking about.
yeah. But you know, by eighth grade, I pretty much had quit doing my schoolwork because I would do my homework even when I was getting F's, and then I would take a test and I would fail the test and they would fail me. And then I'd have to go deal with my dad, whooping my ass. And I just figured, well, fuck, if I'm going to get my ass beat, I'm going to enjoy myself, between, instead of breaking my back to try and get these grades and just still wind up with an ass beat. There's no incentive for me. Right.
Yeah.
And the family lineage is my dad's mother is half native. She was actually born on a reservation in Tama, Iowa. That's called the Muskogee Indian Reservation, but also known as the Sac and Fox for the French Indian Wars. And his dad was half Irish and Norwegian, and they were drunks, all of them. My dad's grandfather died of liver poisoning as a janitor in a church, and my grandmother, my native grandmother, her father drank himself to death in a gutter somewhere in Iowa. And he actually left my grandma and her sister for dead in a bathtub and like vanished with some chick, and like her aunt found her, and then the mother was reunited. And then on my mom's side, her grandmother was from the Canary Islands, which is off Morocco, and then her father was Black Irish, and he was a drunk too. He's sober now. He's the only remaining grandparent I have. But yeah, I grew up, trying to fit in with people. I've always been a little weird, I guess. Now I was like hyperactive. They had me on fucking all these, hyper Ritalin and all
Same.
that. Yeah, growing up, and I feel like I have like mild liver problems, and I believe that it's from those pharmaceuticals they had me on for those 7 years of my life.
There's something about people like us that we question the narrative and we question what we were taught, that there was something about us particularly. And like, I know that they told me that I had ODD, if you know what that is, oppositional defiant disorder.
Okay.
Okay. I'm pretty sure they told me I had that, but it might not even have existed when I was a kid. but like they definitely told my son that he had that. Like there's something particular about us, and I think that we turn out to be fucking awesome. We're the fucking kids in school that were just like, fuck you. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
After third grade, I decided I wasn't going to pledge of allegiance anymore. So I just stopped. And I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And I was at a Christian school, and they told me that I was demon possessed. I was like, all right, I guess. It was like, because to me, that looks like an idol. And it looks like you have that above the Christian flag. And so which one of us is demon possessed? I don't know.
Well, I was actually raised in like a Christian type household. They had me going to Sunday school every Sunday, vacation Bible school, summer Christian camp. So I know a lot about the Bible. I've never read it all the way through, but I've done a lot of studying on it. And I like focus on the more mystical, esoteric aspects of the Bible. And
I'm just figuring that stuff out now, which is fun.
Yeah. But you know, I grew up, you know, fighting a lot, skateboarding, in trouble all the time. And I believe ADD itself is actually a superpower, because when you got us trying to focus on mundane shit that like normies and NPCs can focus on, we can't do it, dude. It's like we can't do it. But
it's exactly that. Okay, so human beings were not created for that shit, and it's a compliment when they tell us like there's something wrong with you. You can't sit in your desk for 8 hours a day and just listen to me speak and tell you the truth, and then I'm going to tell it to you, and then you just repeat it back after me. Now sit in this fucking straight line like this. Don't fidget or make any noise. Like, it's weak, weird people that fucking thrive in those situations. Like, I was like, I'm not going to sit in my desk. And they're like, what do you mean you're not going to sit in your desk? I was like, I'm not going to sit in my desk. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to go talk to that cute girl over there. And they're like, go to the office. I was like, okay. And I'd go like, I swear to God, I would just like leave. I'd walk into the hall, and then I'd just like hit the exit and leave.
I was also a jokester. Like, I cracked a lot of jokes. And like, I remember like I would get sent to the office for doing that. And I remember like the teacher would say something, and I would like have it lined up for a joke, and I would think office, but then I would think the fucking joke is so good, I would crack it anyways and be like laughing and waving on my way out the door to the principal's office. And then I'd get
You wouldn't even wait for her to say go to the office. You'd be like, you'd crack and be like, I already know, and then you just walk out.
Yeah, pretty much. And like everybody would be laughing, and I'd be waving and on my way to the office. And by the time I was like 15, I was getting in trouble. I was getting in trouble for stealing at a young age. And by the time I was 15, I was in juvenile hall. And that was around 1992, 1991, the gang era in Los Angeles where I grew up. And so, yeah, I was getting into drugs and drinking and smoking a lot of weed. And you know, I wound up in and out of jail till 1993, in boys' homes and group homes, and just the behavior got more intense. And you know, it went from like stealing and graffiti to like fighting and assault. And mind you, I never fought with people that like for no reason. It was always provoked. I was never like, you know, I'm not a big dude. I've always been pretty good at fighting. You know, at 13, my dad had me in Muay Thai, kickboxing for a couple of years. And you know, to get me, because I didn't like baseball. I kind of liked soccer, but, you know, and I liked skateboarding. So, and thank God he got me into kickboxing, because I wound up in 1993 at 17 years old to go do 6 months in a county camp called Camp Glen Rocky, which was like a last stop camp before you wind up in the Youth Authority, CYA, the California Youth Authority. And I wound up just getting in all kinds of fights in that camp, and they refiled on me and they sent me to the youth authority. So I went from doing 6 months to now I'm facing a year and a half. I go to the youth authority and kept fighting, and eventually 6 months turned into 6 years. And my original offense was the actual offense was a second-degree robbery with enhancement, but it was basically accessory to purse snatching. And yeah, and I was watching these dudes leave with gun charges, attempted murder. They would leave manslaughter. They were all leaving jail before me. But it was like, it's the 1990s. Even though I'm not a straight white boy, I have lighter skin. I do have dark hair and dark eyes, but I was a white boy to everybody in there. And if they diss you and you don't fight, then I've always been good at psychological, not always. I got really good at psychological warfare by the time I was 17 because I was in and out of jail. I was running the streets. I was doing, that hood rat shit. And so by the time I was in YA, I knew the game. It was like, dude, you don't want to get fucking punked out and have that jacket on your back. So, like I said, 6 months turned into 6 years. It was actually 5 years and 11 months. And I was, by the time
How old were you when you got out?
I was in from 17 to 23, but about a year and a half before I got out, I started going to Native American services, and that was that kind of opened a doorway to like meditation and some breath work. And I read this book called We're All Doing Time, and it was like sun salutation, yoga, and meditation. And then I was doing the Native American stuff. And then like the fighting kind of stopped because before I went to Native American services, I had graduated from fighting to using weapons, right? Because if you use weapons in jail, people, they don't want to fuck with you, right? So like I caught an 18-month an 18-month an 18-month add-on. I forget what the fuck they call it. But I caught an 18-month add-on to my sentence for battery packing 2 child molesters and a staff member. And I wound up
battery packing. Is that batteries in a sock and beating them or something? Or
it's called a battery pack. I didn't have batteries. What I had was a bar of Zest soap, which is like a fucking brick, and it's a big bar of soap. And I threw that in a pair of socks, and then I just went out and just started cracking skulls.
We used to fight with pool balls and socks.
That's what I'm saying. So in a bar of Zest soap is literally rock fucking hard, and it's a big bar.
Yeah,
it's the biggest bar of soap they make.
Dude, that's actually a little bit better too because it's lighter. And the pool balls, dude, were fucking pretty heavy.
Yeah. I saw Steven Seagal do that in a movie once. But after that, like, I stopped having to fight so much because people knew, like, oh shit, this motherfucker will book me, right? And so I was able to like focus more on my
It sucks that you have to add an 18 months onto your sentence just to have people leave you alone. You have to like take it to that level. You know what I mean? It beat the hell out of someone and they're like, all right, fine, we'll leave you alone.
For the most part, even before that, like people didn't really fuck with me too much. Before that, it was more like, it would just be random shit where people would disrespect you. And, they would think because you're small or you're a white boy, you're not going to fight. And it's like, no, motherfucker, like, I ain't got nothing to lose. And I know I'd rather take an ass kicking than get punked out by everybody on the block, dude. Straight out, right? I've been fighting.
So let's say you fight and you like lose pretty bad. That still gains some respect because you were willing to fight.
Yeah, you got
that's good.
Okay. Yeah, you handled your business.
That's good.
I
haven't been to prison, and I'm hoping I never do. But I'll keep
And
that in mind.
for anybody that's
I've
doubting
been to the county a few times, several times, but
it's doubting what I'm saying is my YA number was 69841. I was down from 93 to 99. And
damn, man.
the last facility I was in was actually closed down and condemned because of all the corruption in it. Where I was at, it was called Gladiator School. It was the youth training school across from Chino Penitentiary off Euclid Avenue in Chino, California.
I
And
had homies, yeah. CYA was fucking serious, dude.
yeah, and they called it Gladiator School because that's where little boys turn into men. And that's part of why I call my podcast Esoteric Gladiator, because I was literally in what they call Gladiator School.
So for our audience that isn't from California, and I think they changed the name, but back in the day, CYA, California Youth Authority is what it was called. It was straight up fucking prison, but for kids.
Yeah.
It was like juvie, but it was fucking prison.
Yeah.
It was a huge fucking difference.
I mean, people, fucking Tupac rapped about it. He's like, he got stretched to YA and hit the hood swole. Like YA was the abbreviation for Youth Authority. But I was in the Hammond G. Stark Youth Correctional Facility, and they closed it down after I left because of corruption, because a staff member was murdered while I was there. She got battery packed, strangled, and shoved in a trash can, and they found her body in a dump 3 days later. And I believe her name was Niecy Baker, but they locked our whole facility down.
Hey, ACAB includes fucking jail guards, so I mean.
So they locked our whole facility down for 9 months. So what that means is,
while you were inside?
Yeah, well, I was already on a lockdown program for fighting before that. And when you get in a lockdown program, they put you in a yellow jumpsuit and you're not allowed outside. You're only allowed out of your room for 1 hour a day. So I was allowed out of my room for 1 hour a day, but not allowed to go outside. And I was already on that for 3 months. From there, they locked the facility. I would think it was like 7 to 9 months. They locked it down where we weren't allowed to leave our rooms for any length of time except for showers, which was for 3 minutes. And during that time, I must have got in 3 fights just because everybody's pent up, right? And fighting, I'm talking about fighting asshole naked in the shower area, like swinging on people buck naked in the shower, in shower shoes, slipping all over.
It's kind of like a fucking boxing round because you got 3 minutes. So you have to it's like ding ding, and you got to just get in there.
Yeah, yeah, and you get maced up and shit, and then so that was more time for me to be on the lockdown program after the institutional lockdown, which again 3 minutes a day for 7 months straight. And as soon as the lockdown ended and I was in the lockdown program, I went to go for parole board, and I had already been down at that point for almost 3 years. I was a month away from being 21 years old. So what they told me is the youth authority only had jurisdiction over me till I was 21 years old. And so I was like, they're going to max me out at 21. I can't lose. So I go up to parole board and I'm sitting there, and they say, yeah, well, you're going to be 21 in a month. We're going to just send you to a group home facility, and hopefully you'll have a month to get your shit together. It's not looking good for you. And then this other board member interjected. He goes, hold on. It says here that he's a 707B number. And the guy goes, oh, really? And I didn't know what that meant, but I instantly got a hot flash. I've always been kind of empathic and psychic. I didn't know what it meant, but I got a hot flash. And they said, what that means is we actually have jurisdiction over you till you're 25 years old. So we have you for another 4 years and 1 month if we want you. So we're going to have to deny parole at this time. You got to finish these formal programs that you're in, and then we'll consider releasing you. Well, what they do in these prison, well, what they were doing in YA is so I initially got sent to this place called Ventura School. I was there to do a formal drug program, I kept getting into fights. So they refiled on me from Ventura School and they sent me to youth training school, the bottom of the barrel for fucking adult YA. Because YA has you from 13 to 18 and then from 18 to 25. So the 18 to 25, the most gangster institution at that time was YTS. So they sent me to YTS and I was supposed to do an anger management program, but they kept me on that unit for I had by the time that the riot, well, by the time the murder happened, I had already been on that unit for 10 months of dead time. So they hadn't even started my anger management program. So after parole board, I was just like some of the homies, because I made friends with a lot of the Southsiders, and they all started sending me all these pictures and telling me where to mail it. And I was like, "What's up?" And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna kick a riot off tomorrow at lock in our lockdown, because there's a group of people that were in the lockdown program on the unit that had been fighting or whatever in the yellow jumpsuits." And I was like, whoa, hey, I just went up to parole board a week ago and they hit me with another 4 years. I'm going to earn that time. So I sent all their pictures and stuff back to them. And I was like, and not only am I going to back you guys up, I'm going to go out and I'm going to crack some skulls, right? Because some of the people that were in that lockup program were pedophiles. I was like, I'm going to just get the child molesters, right? And if it goes deeper, like if it's like a race riot, I'll just back your guys' play after that. So yeah, sure as shit, fucking next morning came. I wrapped the battery pack around a string around my belt buckle because they had wands, metal detector wands that they didn't fucking work, but they worked, but they didn't. They would beep no matter what. So I just wrapped it and let it hang over my junk, right? And so then we went out to program, and yeah, it was rock and roll time. And the guys that I was with they ran up into the control room and they started racking doors because there was this dude down the hallway that was on suicide watch that was talking shit to all these people and dissing their neighborhoods and all this stuff. So when they racked the doors, these other dudes, they racked the doors to the suicide rooms. These other dudes on suicide watch had been slid shanks. They ran up into this dude's cell and just stabbed the fuck out of this guy. And while that was going on, I was cracking people in the day room, and it was full-blown pandemonium. This staff member tackles me down. He smacks my head against the concrete. He fucking unloaded like half a can of mace in my face. I was down for the count. They wound up leaving me in a jail cell bleeding for about 6 hours. I had a fucking a split in my eyebrow from where he slammed my head in the floor. And the nurse came up and they're like, "Why are you guys leaving him in here? He needs to go get stitches. Like, what are you guys doing?" And again, there's corruption in this institution. So what they do with these programs is they'll sentence you to these programs, but they'll make you wait, right? So you do dead time because every year, each ward is worth a certain amount of tax dollars, right? That's why, like, the prison industrial, and I'm going to go into all kinds of shit if you don't mind. So
go for it, man.
You remember when they, I believe it was the 1980s, maybe the late 70s, the prison industrial complex spawned. And part of that was because they had a plan to send a lot of our industries overseas because they could get workers. They could basically have slave labor overseas. So they closed. That's why Detroit is in the state it's in now. So they closed down a lot of
Kamala Harris, man, is all about that shit.
Well, they closed down
in California
in the late 70s, early 80s. All of these manufacturing, automotive and all these industries, and they shipped them overseas. Well, they had a plan for that, and it was called the prison industrial complex because they knew once they took these people's jobs, a lot of these people, they had bills to pay, they had families, or they were going to get hooked on drugs or crime or all, whatever. And they had to fill these prisons. Well, it was a flawless plan. They could get tax dollars off these criminals that they had created. And so in the youth authority, the plan is to have all these specialized programs and make people do dead time because they could collect. Juveniles are worth more than adults by, I believe, $15,000. So they were just collecting all kinds of money. But after I had kicked off that riot, and there's also like the reason why the 1990s, the gang era, was so prolific is these dark arts magicians, they know what they're doing. So they had built even more prison in the late 80s, and they needed to fill them because they found out prisons were a lucrative industry. So what they did is they went to the music executives and they proposed an idea. And they're like, they had these, high level music executives in a meeting. And they're like, yes, we're part of the prison industry. You're probably wondering why you're here. Well, we have, put out about 700 to 900 new facilities, and we need them filled. And there's a new phenomena on the streets called gangster rap. And, we know music is powerful. That's why they musician, aka magician, because the musicians control the vibrations. And even in the Bible, God says in the beginning was the word, and the word is a vibration. So they knew that gangster rap would fill the prisons. Oh, and did it? We were overflowing with carjackings, drive-bys, murders, drug charges, all kinds of shit, man. Rape, everything you could imagine was overflowing in the prisons. And so by the time I had done that riot, I made a statement. I had to do that one other time, and I didn't get caught up for it because it was a crooked staff member that was involved. But I wound up in this place in youth training school called The Rock, and it was a lockdown. It was basically the SHU program, and what that is you are in handcuffs anytime you're out of your cell. And so, and this, I'm going to go into how this applies to what's happening right now. So I get put in The Rock. I'm in handcuffs. They put me in a cell. They pop the tray door, which is where they put your food through so you can eat. And you got to turn around to the tray door and they uncuff your handcuffs. And then you're in a cell. And then when you go to showers, they put you in handcuffs. They walk you to the showers and you shower in a cage, 1-man cages on The Rock. And then they put you back in handcuffs and they bring you back to your cell. And then when you go to rec for 45 minutes to an hour, it's in the day room. And they put you in handcuffs. They walk you into 1-man cages that are about 7 foot by 10 foot in a day room with a TV with 6 other cages, right? And then they take you back to your room. So on The Rock, there was this thing called Friday Night Fights, where certain staff members would allow you to fight with other wards, and they would watch and bet on that shit. It was basically the original UFC, right? And so I was involved in that. And by the time I had gotten off lockdown, I had basically spent close to 14 months on lockdown with maybe 5 to 6 hours of going outside of the institution. So I got 5 to 6 hours in 1 year of fresh air. And when I got off The Rock, I went to a unit, and everybody, like, people left me alone. I did get into an issue with a dude, a bigger dude that was known for being really bad dude. And I had gotten involved in some politics, and he didn't like what I had said because it involved his roommate. And his roommate was kind of a punk, right? But I don't know if he had something going with his roommate or what the deal was. If his roommate was paying him off canteen or off sexual, I don't know, right? But he came to my door, and because he was a worker, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna get your door cracked, and we're gonna get down." And I was like, "Fuck, all right." And I was like, "All right, cool." So everybody was at school. I didn't have to go to trade line that day for some reason, and he saw it as an opportunity to run in my room and beat the living fuck out of me. So what I did was I had a pillowcase and I put a can, because you're allowed to have cans of shaving cream. I put a can of shaving cream in a pillowcase with a bar of soap. And when he ran in my room, I just started swinging on him and split his fucking head wide open. And he ran out of the room, and they couldn't do shit to me because the staff members unlocked my door for him to come in and fuck me up. And so they couldn't do shit, and they covered that one up. He had to go to he fell down, or I don't know what story they told him. But before that even happened, there was talks between me and him and some of his people about that. It was like, I had said, like, "Look, bro, we don't gotta fight. I just said what I said, bro. And like I don't really want this to escalate. Like, well, you don't want to escalate. What are you gonna do? This and that." I was like, I said what I said. I don't want it to escalate. Like I'm not gonna let you come in my house and victimize me. I don't want it to escalate. And so I had put that out there. Like, I don't want to get down with you. I don't want let's just squash it. Whatever with you and your roommate, that's your business. Fucking cool. But he didn't want to let it go, so that's how that wound up. But after that, I never had to use a weapon again while I was in there, and I only got into a couple more fights, and they were low-key fights. They were in the blind spots, as you call it. Otherwise, I was allowed to focus on drawing and doing art, and I started doing a lot of art. If you see my tattoos, I can do a portrait on your body just like a picture. But a lot of the staff members started having me draw their family members. They were bringing me cigarettes, tattoo ink, fucking candy, all kinds of shit, anything that I want. I was allowed to have shit myself, art supplies that you're not normally allowed to have, extra hot trays, extra phone calls. I had what they call juice. But I got really involved into the Native American services and the more like spiritual practices. But I was released in 1999, and I'm not lying when I say within 4 days of being out of jail, I wanted to go back. Like, I was institutionalized. And I knew, but the last year of me being in jail was one of the most level, balanced, spiritually sound years of my life. I was doing water fasts. I was doing dry fasts, no food, no water for 2 days at a time. I was praying all the time. I was meditating. I was going to native services. I was doing art all the time. And I just felt like I had it pretty good, except for the fact that there was no chicks. But yeah, I wanted to go back on the fourth day. But by that point, my spiritual awareness had heightened so much. I was more moral than ever, right? And I didn't want to get hooked on drugs or alcohol or anything like that. Because if you would have let me out on before my 21st birthday, I would have been back. But after 6 years, Your Honor, I'm a changed man. I don't want to go back to jail. So basically,
it might have been the best thing for you, man, to have.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Like I tell people, like, I've had girlfriends or whatever. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And now I'm like, I'm not. Thank God. You know what? Hey, hard times create strong men. And I lived through it. Here I am. And I've always said, God shoved me in the gladiators arena, and I came out alive. And there was way more badass gladiators in there than me. And I came out alive because a lot of what I was able to do my last year in there was mental. Like, that's why I didn't have to fight anymore. I knew a lot of people. I'd earned my respect. People left me alone. I did a lot of art. People paid me for art. And I had homies that had my back, that if somebody tried to come at me sideways, a dude with a lot of say-so would go talk with him. I tattooed a lot of people while I was in jail. That got me a lot of respect. Um, uh, and so I'm skipping over a lot of shit in there. Whatever, it's all water under the bridge. But I got a job in a tattoo shop on Hollywood Boulevard in 2000 as an apprentice. And back then it was called Tattoo U. It was off Hollywood Boulevard in Cherokee. And the guy saw my drawings and he was like, dude, if you could do this on skin, you'll be a fucking famous tattoo artist. Right? Long into the short, the apprenticeship lasted about 8 months. And then me and him had a falling out. I needed to make money. My family was breathing down my neck. And so I left the tattoo shop. I had equipment and I got a job fucking doing telemarketing. And then I got a job at like, the Do It Center, which is kind of like a low level Home Depot. And then I got into construction and like laboring and demolition and things like that. And I started making a little more money. And I started drinking and smoking weed again, but I wasn't like doing pills or snorting anything. And once I got women, I was like, oh, I ain't never going back to jail again. It ain't happening, player. And by the time I was 28, I was working on houses with some really good carpenters on like houses in Beverly Hills and on the Central Coast and in San Luis Obispo and like really nice homes. And, learning from really good carpenters and doing like laboring too as well. And just about anything. Right. And so when I was 28, my tattooing had gotten pretty good outside of a shop, and my girlfriend at the time went behind my back and showed my portfolio to a shop, and they're like, he's not in a shop. Wow, he's really good. Can you have him come talk to us? And so I was like, yeah, I'll go talk to them. And so I went and I talked to them, and the name of the shop was Studio City Tattoo. And I talked to the owner at the time, Clay, and he said, look, I can't offer you a job because I have a full house, but your work is good enough to where you should be working in a shop. And I have a friend up the street who owns Body and Soul Tattoo, which was famous for when Britney Spears went crazy and shaved her head and got tattooed. That was where I worked. I wasn't working there on that shift at the time, but my good friend Derek was, and he told me all about it. But I was at that shop at the time, and so I got tattooing there, and then I tattooed, there for like 6 years. I tattooed at a shop called Subculture Tattoo with a guy named Eric Blair who tattooed. He came out of Sunset Strip Tattoo under a guy named Greg James, and Eric Blair's nobody knows who he is, but they know about his tattoo. His tattoo is one of the most famous tattoos in the world, and it's the Thug Life tattoo that's on Tupac. And I have on my wrist Snug Life tattooed by Eric Blair because he tattooed Thug Life on Tupac. And that was my way of like, by the time he did that, I was into reversal magic. Like, well, fuck, like I want to reverse the thug shit. I don't want everybody doing this thug shit. So let's put Snug Life, right? Like, because I love snuggling with these hotties, right? And so he tattooed Tupac a couple of times, and I asked him, well, what was Tupac like? He's like, oh, he was really quiet. He didn't really say much. He was like a nice guy. He left me a cool tip. But he was really quiet. He tattooed a bunch of celebrities, Angelina Jolie, Billy Bob Thornton. He tattooed Anna Nicole Smith before she died. But now he owns a shop in Amsterdam called Subculture Tattoo. But from there, I went to another tattoo shop in the Valley called Genuine Electric. I'm still friends with those guys. And then I started getting really, really good at black and gray portraits and realism. And I don't know, I eventually got to this place where I started having nervous breakdowns or anxiety attacks, right? And because I've always been psychic, I thought, oh, some bad shit's going to happen, but nothing bad would happen. And I'd be like, what the fuck's going on? So eventually I figured out I probably have PTSD. I was 34 years old at the time. And for over 20 years, all I had was nightmares. And every once in a while, I'd have a sex dream to break up the nightmares. But it was all nightmares. And so I remember I was like, how can I get rid of this PTSD? And I took tests, and sure as shit, I had all the symptoms. And it said that smoking weed will help. Well, at that time, I hadn't smoked weed in about 8 months because I would get paranoid and depressed smoking weed. So I was like, well, fuck it, I'll do anything to get rid of this. So for a few weeks it worked, and then it went back to paranoia and depression. So then I stopped. And then a few weeks after that, I was like, dude, I need to get into like yoga or meditation or Tai Chi or something, dude, because I'm not doing good. I lost my job. My girlfriend left me. My grandma had just died. And I was going through it at that point. And I woke up one morning and I felt like I was going to have an anxiety attack. And during that, I got a phone call. And it was a friend of mine that I've been trying to reach for like a month. And I was like all intense. And he's like, whoa, bro, calm down. You don't sound like you're doing so good. And I'm like, I'm not. And he's like, well, that's why I'm calling you. I just went and I did this 10-day silent meditation called Vipassana. And you were the first person I thought about. So it was literally like divine intervention. And I was like, give me all the info. I'm going to go do it. And I went and I did it. And it was harder than being in prison. 10 days of silence. You're not allowed to read. You're not allowed to write. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to do anything. You don't have a phone. You don't have nothing. You're there to meditate for basically 10 hours a day at an hour a time with 5 minutes in between each meditation or a half an hour if it's meal time. You're there to meditate. And what happened on the fourth day is I had an emotional breakdown. See, I don't cry very easy. And at that point, like I said, I lost a girlfriend. I lost a grandma who I was close to, and I lost my job. I didn't shed a tear for any of it. But on the fourth day, I broke and I fell down and I cried for about 45 minutes straight and I couldn't stop. And I hadn't cried in years. By the seventh day, my dreams, I started having flying dreams, which I hadn't had in over 20 years. I was like flying in my dreams, and my dream state changed within 7 days of those meditations. I left that center and I kept up with an hour of meditation every morning, and I would pray for about 15 minutes after that. And within the first 2 weeks, I noticed this feeling in my chest that I used to get when I was a child that I hadn't felt for years. And that feeling is joy. Joy came back to me. And I kept up with that practice. And all of a sudden, I had this epiphany I had a lawsuit for a car accident that I got in a couple years before. And it came to me after that meditation. And I remodeled my garage and I turned it into a private tattoo studio. And I started tattooing people out of my garage and then like posting more stuff on social media at the time. And then I started traveling more, which was something I never really got to do that much. And all these people started to come get tattooed by me, and I stuck with the meditation practice. And then I kind of fell off for a couple of months. And then I went back and I did a 3-day Vipassana and reset myself. And I stayed on the meditation path an hour a day. About 2 years after, I wound up going to Spain and all over the country here and traveling and tattooing and doing tattoo conventions and stuff. And I wound up getting an opportunity to move to the island of Kauai in Hawaii. And my buddy, I didn't really know anybody else. So I went and I visited. And then I decided, oh, shit, this place is epic. Yeah, I'll move. And so 4 months later, I moved to Kauai. And that was in 2011, right? Well, we all know about 2012, right? I have a theory about 2012. For those people that knew about 2012, before 2012, that was for you to know about, because that was for your own individual timeline to shift. And by that time I was still smoking and drinking. I did ayahuasca a few times while I was in Kauai, and that was profound. And in between all of it, I kind of fell off of the meditation and stuff, and I started drinking a lot, right? Which I was never a super heavy drinker. And I think it was because I was in this relationship out there. I got into organic farming and I learned about natural law while I was in Kauai too. I wound up being on Kauai for 3.5 years. But in 2012, at the end of 2011, me and my girlfriend broke up, and I knew. I was like, man, you got to stop drinking. You got to start working out again. You know, I've trained martial arts off and on for many years, but I wasn't doing it at the time. I wasn't doing shit. I was drinking and tattooing and just being a shitbag, right? Not meditating. So I wound up getting to go to another 10-day Vipassana on the big island of Hawaii in a place called Pahoa, which now is probably under volcanic rock because of the active volcano that happened there after I did that. But that was one of the hardest moments of my life because I don't know, I was just working through a lot of shit. And then when I left that, no more drinking, no more. I started meditating, bro. I swear on my life, for 2.5 hours a day, an hour and 15 minutes in the morning and an hour and 15 minutes at night. And I kept that practice for 9 months straight. And after that, I was like down to like an hour a day. But I worked out, I got back into shape again. And yeah, I've pretty much kept up that practice since, like meditation. I got into breath work and all that. But I wound up moving to Maui from Kauai after being on Kauai for 3.5 years. I lived on Maui. I did landscaping. I did farming. I tattooed while I was out there. And then I was there for a little over a year. I kind of got really deeply involved into occult studies and learned about the actual functioning of what I would call white and green magic, and earth magic and things like that. Got really deep into astrology and numerology and studying, you know, the dark, because I want to know my enemies. So I studied the darker aspects of the cult. I went down deep dives on the Vatican, on Bush family, on all these crazy, you know, Zionism and the royal family and all this crazy shit, and learned about, you know, symbology. And, you know, I was already into conspiracies because, as I said, 9/11 was my red pill moment. I woke up instantly once I saw 4 planes got hijacked. That doesn't make sense. We've never even had one hijacked. And then at that very moment, the president of the United States is reading to children in a school. I was like, what? They're trying to make it look like evil terrorists and noble, loving president, heroic president. I saw that as psychological warfare. I saw it as a Hollywood setup, and I instantly knew that we did this to ourselves, and there was something sinister. And that's when I got into conspiracies. But while I was on Maui, I got into the inner workings of all this shit. And I left Maui, and this was right before the elections, right? Remember Trump and Hillary Clinton? And at that time, I was like, fuck, man, Hillary's going to win this. This bitch has been groomed. She's the satanic black witch. I didn't know. I'm not a registered voter, dude. All I knew is I heard Trump was a racist and I hated Hillary, right? And I was like, oh, and I didn't like Bernie Sanders because I knew the motherfucker was a communist and I didn't believe shit that motherfucker was saying, right? And so, like a couple of months before the elections, I told everybody Bernie Sanders is going to drop out and he's going to endorse Hillary Clinton. And sure as fuck, that's what that motherfucker did, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, my buddy, he's Mexican. He was in LA at the time. He's like, bro, are you watching the debates? And I was like, fuck no, man. Like, Hillary Clinton's a satanic black witch, and isn't Trump an election? He's like, isn't Trump a racist? And he's like, fuck no, Trump ain't a racist. I'm Mexican. I'm voting for him. He's like, you should listen to what they're debating. So I listened to debates, and I was like, oh, shit, if this guy Trump means what he's saying, then shit, we might actually have a chance. But I was like, there's no way this guy's going to win. Right. Well, sure as shit, he wins. And I left in October of 2016 back to the mainland. And I left, and I was to be a gypsy. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a home. I had a car that I shipped back from the islands, and I was just going to drive all over the country and tattoo, which is what I did. But I started watching how the Democratic Party went from, the Occupy movement to this far left, communist, fucking debaucherous, fucking like Sodom and Gomorrah that it is today. And I started speaking out on that shit from a conspiratorial aspect. And everybody started calling me a right-wing extremist. I'm like, I'm not even a registered voter. Like, I lost so many clients and friends and people that I thought were so much smarter than they were because they all followed the left-wing party, right? Now, if you ask me, I fucking hated the neocons, right? I hated the Bush-era conservatives. Like, I didn't think I could hate anyone more than the neocons until the modern left showed up. And all these, these people started pushing all these policies that endangered children, right? And, I wound up, after traveling for a year and a half, I wound up getting an opportunity to own a tattoo shop in Washington State on the Olympic Peninsula in Port Angeles. And so that's what I did. And the tattoo shop, I made all kinds of money up there. It was a success. And then I want to say I was there for about 4 years. I got super deep. I trained MMA and Muay Thai and boxing nonstop while I was up there. And, and keep in mind, I'm in my mid 40s, right? I wasn't doing heavy sparring, but I was doing light to medium sparring and, just staying prepared for what I felt like I saw coming on this planet, and dialed my diet in really tight, really started paying attention to like the political, even though I'm not a voter, I wanted to know. I was like, well, I relate a lot more to the conservatives, but I also don't agree with a lot of the shit they say. I don't agree with religious extremism. Like, you guys say you want freedom, but you want to shove biblical shit down everybody's throat. That's not freedom. In your Bible talks about free will over fucking abortion. And if you want to get technical, women have been taking herbs for centuries that is basically like the Plan B pill, aborting their babies. Do I like abortions? No, I don't like them. I see them as there's two ways I see it. An ancient Phoenician Canaanite practice of child sacrifice for the dark arts occultists. And I also see it as a monetary scheme to utilize stem cells and fetal tissue to make a bunch of money. Meanwhile, these dipshits on the left think it's to keep the virtue and feminine intact, and because it's to help,
Dude, it's the most anti-female thing you can do.
Yes, exactly.
The magic of the yoni, the magic of the feminine, the divine, is the creation of life. That is absolutely. Like the most powerful fucking thing that makes agree. You. And then you're like, it's crazy.
The same people that are telling you, if we can only save one life, are the same motherfuckers that are just like aborting every chance they can get, right?
Dude, but then the more satanic element of it is when they start with the whole celebrating and like shouting their abortion, and you're just like, what are you fucking doing? Yes. Like, this made the rounds maybe 2 weeks ago. Do you remember there was some black lady that was rapping and she was shaking her ass in front of a Planned Parenthood? Yeah. I got murder on my mind. Murder on my mind. I was like, at least she's being honest.
Yeah.
Because they.
Well, it's like Bill Burr said. He's like, I agree with everything Bill Burr says. He's like, he's like, I'm not anti-abortion, don't get me wrong, but he's like, I'm pro-abortion, but you're still killing a baby.
Yeah.
Straight out. Like, he's like, it's not that he said he was pro-abortion. He's like, you're free to do whatever you want to do. I don't want to limit your freedom. It's not my choice. It's not my body. I agree with that. It's not. Straight out. It's not. And it goes back to free will. Straight out. Like, if you can forgive
it's a fucked up thing, but yeah, I agree with you as far as it's like, I'm one of these people that I'm pro-life, but I also don't want laws against it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that the government has the right to point a gun at you and tell you what to do with your body like that. Well, and I think it's a fucked up thing and you shouldn't do it. And I think that there should be a lot of things that can help a woman and maybe try to convince a woman to keep the baby, all those sort of things. But, and the big thing is that, like, all those motherfuckers that say they're pro-life, you're like, okay, well, what are you doing to, like, support young mothers?
So if you think about it like
and
this.
Some of them put their money where their mouth is. Like, I actually know a lot of Christian conservatives that donate a lot of money to, like, those, you know what I'm talking about, those pregnancy care centers, and they really do. They donate money, and they'll donate diapers and food and, like, all kinds of cool stuff. So there are some, but the majority don't. And then those same people that say they're pro-life are, like, pro-death penalty and pro-war.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, all these pro-lifers, they're so fucking pro-life, but all their kids are in the military killing other people's children, right? And I know abortion's a slippery slope, but again, like, if you're a true Christian, free will is important, and you support a lot of shit in that Bible that involved murdering and raping and killing people's firstborn children and stealing their gold and shit. That's a different topic, but it's like the right wing will be like anti-immigration, and I kind of was like that for a while because the cartels are involved, and it's not like families are sneaking over the border anymore. If you're going to try and sneak over the border and you didn't pay the cartel, they're going to kill your family in Mexico. It's big business for the cartels. So it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s. It's big business now. And I know a lot of child trafficking happens because of it. But all these guys are anti-immigration because what do they tell the left? You guys, the left is pro-immigration because it's virtuous for them, but they're not bringing immigrants into their home and paying the bills. They want everyone else to pay the bills because these guys are idiots. They don't play chess, so they don't see the foresight. But in the same token, the right wing with abortions, it's like, are you guys fucking protecting these children from CPS? Because to me, that's a big trafficking ring. And I know that because CPS tried to steal my fucking niece from my family. And I'm not even going to go in that story. It was a horrific scandal. CPS is fucking child protect the pedophile services. So it's like these guys, it's hypocritical on both sides. And I know it's a slippery slope, but in the same token, I'm not in a woman's shoes. I don't know if, she comes from a fucking horrible family and some scumbag knocked her up and the baby has no future, or if she's going to have birth complications.
Now, see, that's where the baby doesn't have a future. Man, every single life has so much potential, even because look at the situation you were put in. I can tell you the situation that I was in. My dad was a fucking heroin addict and in and out of prison. I'm happy that I was born. I'm happy that I'm here.
Yeah, me too. And at the same token, it's like, I believe in reincarnation, dude. I believe in reincarnation. I didn't used to believe
I do
that.
most days.
So once I got super deep into meditation, I had no idea the tenets of Buddhism were off reincarnation. I just knew I meditated regularly. I didn't become like a Vipassana cult member because Vipassana has been destroyed by the left wing. It's liberal as fuck. They want you wearing masks. You got to have a vaccine passport, all this bullshit. The liberals ruin everything they touch. So, but I just naturally started believing in what I perceived to be real magic and reincarnation. And that was after meditation. I'm talking about at this point in my life, I've spent thousands and thousands of hours in meditation, not no bullshit ass meditation, thousands of hours. And now I'm probably at hundreds of hours of visual meditations and vocal meditations. So, because I've expanded upon my practice over the years. But yeah, man, it's I'm not in these women's shoes, dude. And if these babies are being aborted when uh it's man, a lot of these people are hunters too in the right wing. You're killing animals and you're supporting factory farming where they you wonder why we have so many fucking sheeple on the street, because all the meat they eat comes from factory farms. And what's the process of that? Well, the animals that come from those farms, their genetics and their lineage were all animals that came from factory farms, and they were locked in fucking cages. They weren't getting to graze. They were tortured. They were filled full of fucking harmful substances. And even when they went to slaughter, they had to witness all the animals screaming in terror for a half an hour before they got to scream in terror and get murdered. And if people don't think that energy is transferring into your meat, think again. And no, I'm not a vegan. I know about the factory farming industry, and I try to eat either hunted meat or free range, grass fed, consciously raised meat. If I eat meat, I don't eat a ton of meat, but I still eat meat. And we have this society that's in constant state of fear, and they're literally like factory farmed animals because they eat that energy all the time. Right?
Yeah.
But anyways, fucking, so I left Washington. It was like when I left LA to go to Hawaii. I had established this business in LA, even though it was off the radar, where I made a ton of money. I had hookups all over the city to get whatever I wanted. I knew all kinds of awesome people, all kinds of beautiful women, and something inside of me said, what kind of man are you? You have everything you could possibly want. Are you strong enough to move to a island out in the middle of nowhere and rebuild yourself? And so I was like, you need to be tested. So that's what I did. And let me tell you, Hawaii, the island of Kauai in particular, was I went through a dark phase on that island, similar to what I went through in prison. It was extremely tough for a very long time for me on that island. Not because of the locals. I was friends with all the locals. I grew up around Mexican gangbangers. The locals of Hawaii are very similar to the Mexican gangsters in LA. So I never had problems with locals. I was friends with all the locals. I tattooed them. I knew how to read their tattoos. I could tell them what the symbols meant. I paddled on the canoe teams with them. And I was smart. I never dated any local women. I was smart about it. I had problems with haoles on that island, never with locals. Maui, on the other hand, it was a different vibration. I didn't make as much money on Maui, but I had a better time. The vibration was higher. It was, I don't know, man. But when I moved from Washington, it was like I have this business that I'm renting. I have this awesome house that I'm renting. I'm training martial arts all the time. I have everything that I want. I'm stacking chips in Washington, dude. I'm killing the game out there. But I felt like I was at a standstill. And I was like, I felt this I got to go, dude. I got to test my manhood again, dude. And so that's what I did. I packed up. And for the last year, I've been to 19 states. I went to Mexico once. Right now I'm in Tennessee. I just drove through Southern Illinois from Minnesota. Before Minnesota, I was in Alaska tattooing for 2 months and just fucking crushing it up there. Before that, I was traveling through Texas, I was in Minnesota for a minute, then Oklahoma, was in Texas for a minute, all over Texas, camped my way through New Mexico, was in Arizona with family. Then I was in LA for a while. And I did a guided ketamine journey while I was in LA. I don't party anymore. I don't drink. I don't smoke pot. Every once in a great while, I will do hallucinogens. It's crazy because I used to get high to escape reality. Now I do it to face a deeper sense of reality. You know what I mean? It's like, because I don't enjoy hallucinogens. They're terrifying for me, but I do them because
I
they
kind of enjoy the terrifying nature of them.
the profound
Yeah.
revelations of what they bring you. Um,
And yeah, it can be really rough having to face all the bullshit that you are like putting away,
yeah,
and having to be forced and confronted with it. It can be very uncomfortable. But goddamn, I really appreciate it.
yeah.
It's such a necessary experience, and it's one of those things that I think everybody needs. I think if I was king of the world, I think everybody needs to do a heroic dose every 6 months.
You know that I well, so as I said before I got on the podcast, right now I'm doing a 4-day juice cleanse. And then on the 5th of November, I've signed up for a 10-day water only fast. I've never gone beyond 4.5 days of water only. As I said, when I was in prison, I used to do 2-day dry fast, which is no food, no water for 2 days at a time, which is extremely crazy. By the second day, you literally feel like you're entering a mushroom trip. It's like you feel closer to God than you've ever felt in your life. I mean, I can't say that, but you feel close to God, dude, on the second, for me at least, on a dry fast. I felt, I don't know, it was profound, man. But I'm going to go knock out this. Uh, so I agree with the heroic dose, like, these meditation things that I go to and like this fasting thing and like the breathing exercise and all this stuff. Like I look at this 10-day water fast as a heroic dose, dude. Who the fuck
Yeah,
wants to go without food for 10 days? Right?
not me.
That right there, because we can break it down like this. What's the first resource you need to survive? Air, right? I've held my breath for 2 minutes and 48 seconds before from the Wim Hof breathing exercises, right? That's the longest I've ever held my breath. What's the next resource? Water. I've gone without water for 2 days at a time a few times. Then what's the next resource? Food. Well, I've done 4.5 days with no food numerous times. But food, it's like, of all of those things, it's like the one you can go, they say, over 40 days without food. If your body is trained for fasting, you can do that, right? But it's one of those things that we consume so often. It's like our number one addiction. And so I'm looking at it as, well, if I can somehow master this food thing, then what can't I master? Right? Because conspiracies at the beginning was, like I said, I started following it immediately after 9/11. I knew the government's in on it. And then I discovered David Icke and Alex Jones and Jordan Maxwell and what's that guy's name? William Cooper. And I was on and off with conspiracies for years. But eventually, what conspiracies should do to you is they should reveal to you the darker aspects of humanity, right? Like, what do you mean there's dungeons full of children that are being sodomized in satanic rituals, or they're fucking dead bodies, or whatever these crazy satanic cults are doing, right? And the people that run the world are the ones that are doing this stuff. What do you mean all the serial killers were members of satanic cults that are linked directly to the government? What? Oh, yeah, Ted Bundy
Mm-hmm.
was an active member of the Republican Party. What's that guy's name? The killer Clint, John Wayne Gacy, active member in the Democratic Party, right? Richard Ramirez, a known Satanist. David Berkowitz, a known Satanist. Jeffrey Dahmer, known Satanist, right? These guys were all fall guys for satanic cults, right? I'm not saying these guys weren't murdering. Think about this. during George Bush's presidency, he pardoned one person on death row. Do you know who that person was? Henry Lee Lucas, a serial killer and member of a known satanic cult. George Bush Jr. pardoned one person, and it was a serial killer from a satanic cult. What does that say to you, right? So if you know about the darker sides of humanity that these people that run the world practice and pray to and worship and summons demonic spirits, that should tell you there's a polar opposite to that, right? Now, we have religion, and I believe religion is partially to blame for atheism, because when you listen to a lot of this bullshit, institutionalized, watered down, basic white bitch religious talk that doesn't go into the mystical aspects of the Bible or chases any of the mystical aspects of that out, like, no wonder people don't want to be part of a religion. You're just like, what? Really? It's just this simple? The preacher was, he was fucking in jail for rape, and now he's saved and he's Jesus. Bullshit, right? I can just get salvation from this prayer and being baptized. You show me. See, I'm a big proponent in natural law. If it doesn't happen in nature, it doesn't happen in human nature, right? Where in nature does something that easy come to us, right? Let me see you go kill a deer right now in the next 5 minutes. Good luck. How hard was it for me to become a world traveling tattoo artist? Fucking took me over a decade. It took me so long to get good at tattooing. What do you think? God's just going to bless you right away? That's why all these Christians that attack a lot of these other spiritual cultures and all these other spiritual practices, well, clearly you don't know the history of the world. Go read about Tiki Viracocha. The description of Tiki Viracocha is the description of Christ. You say your holy land is in Israel in the middle of a fucking desert? Really? That's the land of milk and honey? The Zionist started state of Israel? The Rothschilds? The number one satanic family? You trust them? Why not Africa? Why not America, where vegetation is prolific? Hey, Christ said he was the Lion of Judah. Where are lions from? Right? So there's mystical aspect. Astrology is evil. Oh, yeah, well, how come your Savior was born under a star? How come 3 wizards from the Far East came to visit your Savior and brought him alchemical ailments, conductive ailments like silver and gold, and aromatherapies like frankincense and myrrh?
That's the thing that I'm discovering about Christianity, is that its origins were a hell of a lot more esoteric and occult than most Christians want to admit now. And a lot of it was just co-opted by the Vatican and then occulted by the Vatican. But the Vatican knows the true history, and they're occult as fuck.
Absolutely. Yes. You look at a large portion. So here you go. A large portion. In order for Satanists to recognize Satan, they first have to recognize the polar opposite of Satan, which is Yeshua, right? And I'm not saying this as a Christian. I'm all denominational and non-denominational at the same time. So in order for these guys to even have this dark arts religion they have to go through Yeshua first, right? In order for, let's get into atheism real quick, because I love to fucking talk shit about these science motherfuckers. I love to just debunk the fuck out of their bullshit rhetoric. So,
I mean, yeah, because atheism to me is the most crazy fanatical religion of them all.
100%, right? Here you go. They're so scientific. They're so intelligent. Oh my God. Oh, I believe in the scientific theory and the, all this bullshit. Yeah, fucking right, dude. Your theory of how the universe is created is more absurd than the Bible's theory. All right. You want me to believe that
It takes more faith. Yeah.
Yes. You want me to believe that there was nothingness, which, first of all, doesn't exist. There is no such thing as nothingness. It never existed and it never will exist. It's impossible for nothingness to exist. But out of trillions of years of nothingness, and I don't know where they get all these arbitrary numbers, an explosion happens out of nothingness, right?
They have to make it trillions so that it can explain how nothing became something. They have to make it trillions too, so that we're even more insignificant because we only live for, say, 100 years. Everything they do is to make you feel insignificant, unimportant. You're not special.
Absolutely.
The universe is so vast. So there must be so many different other planets with so much other life. We are not unique. We are something small.
You're an insignificant speck of monkey shit on a fucking rock
that flies through space at 66,000 miles an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So they want you to believe that an explosion happens. But according to the laws of physics, explosions, according to their own science, explosions destroy things. But not this explosion. It's a magic explosion. And everything was created from this explosion. And, all this gas and all this bullshit. And they want you to believe that there's really kind of no divine order, but somehow there's all these patterns in nature that they like to ignore as long as it pushes their bullshit science narrative to the forefront. So here you go. So they're denying the laws of physics, right? With their explosion theory. And I'm like, okay, well, if evolution is real, why aren't explosions happening everywhere? Well, they could say, well, that happened through the cosmos already. Well, why didn't it keep fucking happening, number one? And how come I've never had an explosion of money in my bank account? Or when I've been lonely in a campground, a woman explodes out of nowhere to give me a blowj, right? Like, how come that never happened? But explosions of universes and worlds happen all the time in the mystical fairy tale of science, right? Then they tell you this theory of evolution happened, and they want you to believe this satanic pedophile Charles Darwin, who this cousin fucker Charles Darwin,
who was paid by the Rothschilds.
There you go.
Yeah.
And what's a big practice with these satanic cults? Incest and pedophilia. Well, Charles Darwin checked off 2 of those things, right? And he wants you to believe that we came from a monkey, yet we have all these monkeys all over the planet now, right? And if that isn't bad enough, no God created all of this. But here we go. I'm going to break it down right now. Clouds create water. Water creates oceans. Oceans create waves. Spiders create webs. Bookmakers create books. Authors create stories. Mothers create children. There's an infinite pattern of creativity happening simultaneously at all moments every single day on this planet, but there's no creator behind this pattern.
And things just work literally perfectly. And there are just these things that it's just absolutely nuts, man. Like the math behind these like perfect patterns on these like seashells or on the back of a leaf, or how all of these things work symbiotically, and it's just random.
Yeah, pi.
There's a big boom that happened, and it just happened, and
it's pi, the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, sacred geometry, which is how they used to build. I'm not going to get into it too deep right now because we can do a millennial reign episode where I'll get into sacred architecture if you want. But all this geometry that they used in these ancient buildings was based off geometric patterns in nature so that these buildings themselves would carry a living vibration. That's why when I was in Spain and I walked to these cathedrals, and I'm not talking about Sagrada Familia a modern structure. I'm talking about these ancient cathedrals that nobody knows about, that when you walk in them, every sense of your body is heightened and you feel like you're about to start tripping on mushrooms, dude. Because these buildings, you're walking in the presence of greatness. It was built with the living vibration. So you are in life, right? And it was built to carry sacred vibrations and healing vibrations. But these dipshits put all their faith in science. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's not one institution in this world that has failed more than science. And they conveniently ignore it up to the present day. You know
And
what?
they like to run away from their what's a good word for it? I was going to say their
Failures.
history well, but I mean, the first fucking real scientists were the alchemists, dude, the magicians, the people that were trying to, and that's where the real science is, in my opinion. And they try to hide from their past because they're ashamed of it. Or they're trying to hide it because they don't want you to know that really what they're doing is high level magic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of the science that they tell us, and whatever you want to call it, it's word magic too that they're doing to us. And they're trying to manipulate us, and they're trying to like fuck with us, and they're trying to steal from us, and they're trying to make us vibrate at these weird frequencies. They're trying to make us afraid. And so this science that they have now is just a manipulation and a bastardization of what was real at one point.
Absolutely. Well, these guys, back then they were practicing a true science, which is based off art and creativity, where the seven there's a book, I believe it's called the Quadrivium. It's the 7 sacred arts. They like to call it the liberal arts, but yeah. It's
liberal didn't always used to be a bad word.
That's true.
Liberal came from liberty, which came from library.
Yeah.
And
Libertas.
Libertas, yeah.
But they believed that all these institutions were connected, and they showed you how all these things connected. Well, over time, first of all, we're dealing with a group of people who are members of satanic cults. And if you know how cults operate and the torturous things they do to children, and multiple personality disorder or dissociative personality disorder, we're dealing with a religion that is ran by people who all have multiple personality disorder. They all, so that's why the symbology in these religions is like, well, what does that symbol mean? It's like they've all got all these different meanings because their religion itself has multiple personalities, right? And none of it fucking really makes sense. And they use a lot of Christian stuff and Buddhist stuff and Kabbalah and Islam, the Shriners, and all this shit because their religion itself has multiple personality disorder. All these psychopaths run it, right?
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing, dude. Like, so when you want to go back to like the mystery schools and you start to think about like what is it that they're really hiding, and it seems to me that like whatever it is, even if you think it's nonsense and you don't believe what they believe, you have to understand that these people believe this.
Yes,
and these people believe. It seems to me like it's a one world religion that they all go by, and they have these symbols, and they have these, and I think it might go back if you go back far enough. I think it all ties back to like Saturn worship to me.
Yeah.
Because I think Saturn at one point was probably the biggest thing in the sky. I think it was probably a second sun. I think it was something bigger than our sun. And so a lot of the sun worship that we hear about was actually Saturn worship. I've heard that a lot.
Well, yes.
And
the
go ahead.
The cosmological mythos on that could be true. I don't know. Was it that the sun, if you're being really the son of God, the Christ, the lion, Leo, which is the planet, sun rules Leo. Christ is the Lion of Judah. And Saturn is Kronos. Well, we had coronavirus, which is crown, which is also Kronos, which is Saturn, which is Satan. So we had the Satan virus. But the cosmological mythos, to my knowledge, is Saturn was rivaling the light of the sun and was kicked out of the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they called it the morning star, Lucifer, the star of the morning or whatever. But that Saturn was the actual, the angel,
I mean, because
the planet that got kicked out of heaven.
Yeah, it's one of those things too, because everyone's saying like it is the furthest planet away from us that is still visible by the naked eye, and so people would say like, why Saturn, is that possibly? Well, people will say like, why? How can there possibly be so much like attribution of like godhood and this power and all this crazy stuff for this? Like, basically, you see the shiny little thing over there, and you're like, oh, that's Saturn. Like, because I truly think that at one time Saturn was a hell of a lot closer to us, and we were getting a vibrational energy, and probably this was when things like alchemy was able to be used more. I think this is when we had like things more like Tesla kind of technology, where like there was like free energy, all this crazy kind of shit, because we had this huge thing that was so close to us. And I don't know what its vibrational energy was, but I'm sure it was powerful. This was a time where I think like magic was real. Like magic was like, and that to me was probably the fall of Atlantis. That to me was probably the Tower of Babel falling. That to me was like this time when we had a world connection and this like world communication, and this time that like people were so advanced that they could rival God. You know, that's what it says in the Bible, that God said like, man, if humans are all united and they're all working together, there's nothing that would be able to stop them. You know, and and that to me is whenever whatever the fuck happened cosmologically and knocked Saturn out of like away from us and like cast it out of heaven or something, you know, like what it says about Kronos. I don't know. That's fascinating. It's a fascinating idea.
And when you deal with like modern science, it's not real science. It's black magic, literally. You know, the Rockefellers, they took over the medical industry in the early 1900s.
Yep.
And, you know, got rid of naturopathy. You know, a lot of people don't realize they were giving people like 20 vaccines in the early 1900s, right? The vaccine thing has been going on for decades, right? And then you look at shit like geoengineering, that shit's been going on for 80 years, right? You look at, you know, the chemical warfare, pesticides, you know, technology, you know, the failures in modern medicine, everything that we have right now that's failing on the planet is all because of modern science. All the failures are from Monsanto. That's science. The BP oil spill.
It's the occulting
science
of that shit, man. You're absolutely right. Because they steal the real and then they sell us back the fake. Yeah. And it's this whole thing, this whole system. Like they literally had fucking cars that would run on water. Like they talk about that right from like in the 1970s or 1980s. That dude, but like they had a fucking car that would run on water in 1910.
Yeah, they've had a couple of people that have been off because of that.
Yeah. And so what happens is through the patenting process, and that's why they insist on having things like IP, because I'm very anti-IP. Like, if you can't hold something, like, I don't think that you can own something. Like, intellectual property is what I'm talking about. I don't think that you can own an idea. Sorry. I think that if we have, like, because there's no way to tell who the fuck came up with something first. We could both be simultaneously thinking of something similar, you know, that whole thing. So the whole idea of, absolutely. And so the whole idea of owning an idea and then me saying, okay, I own this. I just bought this from this young, smart genius. and then I can just sit on it and no one can ever do anything with this idea ever again. And that's what they do. So it's the second you come up with some fucking awesome idea, like some perpetual motion, or like, hey, this thing gives off energy more than whatever this is, they go, oh, that's great. We're going to be at your door in 5 minutes. They come and take your shit, and they're like, no, you didn't. I'm like, but what about, no, you didn't. And that's
the occult has infected every facet of society. That's why, like, a lot of conspiracy theorists, they're still kind of walking between two worlds. People need to get it out of their head that some part of this system is good. It's not. It is
man.
system.
I've been having a conversation with folks, like, so much. I mean, today, the post that I put on my on Instagram, the one that you fucking reposted, right? There's some dude on there and saying, well, nationalism can be a good thing. And I'm like, what's your definition of nationalism?
Yeah.
Nationalism,
like,
you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, dude, I get it that, like, you want to be part of a community. I get it that you want to take care of the people immediately around you. But what do I owe? I mean, it's this weird thing. It's like, no, we're not a fucking nation, dude. What the fuck is a nation? It's a delusion.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's an idea.
It's an idea, and it's bullshit. And the whole idea of having these, like, borders and countries, and this is how psychopaths convince you that they have the right to rule over you because they're in charge of this nation, and you need to be proud of this nation, and you're part of this nation, and we need to defend this nation, and so pick up that fucking gun and go and kill that little boy over there because this is for the nation.
Yeah,
you're like, you're a fucking fool, man. I'm sorry, but, like,
that's a good point to idealism. And that goes for religion, that goes for science, that goes for patriotism, that goes for anything. It's idealism. People throw out logic, critical thinking, and common sense for their ideals, which is why I believe so heavily in natural law, because nature shows you the way God works in action. If it doesn't happen in nature, it doesn't happen in human nature. And so, like what I was saying about science earlier, they're responsible for all the failures of man. It's in every industry. All of the innovations in those industries were by modern science, right? We can look at architecture now, or building codes. Like, you know, you got to build your house with a bunch of toxic shit.
Yes, dude. And it's the bureaucracy that kills you, because they make these arbitrary fucking rules, and then you can't build something the way you want to build something. Because what if I want to incorporate these geometrical patterns inside of my home because I want this energy to flow, because I want to feel the presence of God when I walk into my house? But that's not up to code. And I can stop you. Yeah. Like you said, I want something poisonous in your fucking house. Exactly. You have to. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and that is by design. And that is, think about it like this. What we are witnessing now in modern times, and I know you know this, is the full-blown corruption of just how powerful the medical industry is. And that goes, like I said, they changed the curriculum in the early 1900s in medical schools. They got rid of naturopathy and moved to petroleum-based pharmaceuticals. And when you look at what are these pharmaceuticals? They're synthetic derivatives based off natural compounds. They're supposed to emulate what nature already provides. And what are we getting from these scientific advancements? A bunch of side effects, death, and all kinds of weird shit, right? Autoimmune issues, cancer, all this shit. I heard something the other day that cancer didn't appear in this country till after vaccines started, and that the only people in the 1930s that had cancer were all vaccinated. And I believe that. I just drove through the monocropping capital of the country, the Midwest, and these guys they're spraying pesticides all over everything. And what I asked people in those areas is, what is the cancer rates in this area? And they're like, oh, it's out of control, right? What is the lung diseases, brain problems, dementia, Alzheimer's. It's out of control in these areas, right? Hey, fluoride and chlorine in your water, science. Monocropping, science. Building codes, science. Education, science. Food sciences, McDonald's, science. It's all science. Science has fucked this planet up.
Well, you're right, because you're talking about it, and what science needs, what people need to realize, science equals religion.
Yes, it's
So
scientism.
It's scientism, and it's this, but it's this inarguable like religion, because they can tell you, no, God's not in this. This is just pure facts. This is just pure me experimenting, and then I have to be able to reproduce it. And in that way, there is something beautiful about science, but they're not using it correctly, and none of the things they're doing can be reproduced anymore. Like if you actually look at it, man, I've read some articles from actual scientists, real fucking scientists, that are saying, like, I don't know what the fuck, like, whatever this isn't science anymore. We're not doing science anymore.
Yes.
Like, there's nothing. Anyways, it's just one of those fucked up things, because it becomes the state religion is what it is. And it's been substituted for Christianity, because people stopped, just listening to whatever God said, because there was men who would claim to speak for God, and they just got more fucking wild, like popes that would be like, well, give me your fucking kid so I can fuck it. God said so. Shit like that,
Yeah.
And so people are just like, well, then fuck God, so now you have this new state religion, and they can do whatever they want. And now they're like, for science right now, how many people are fucking sacrificing their kids right now? All these fucking kids are just being sterilized for science.
Yep. That's science. Yeah. The new trans movement. And we can thank, and I've been talking about this for at least 7 years. Because after 2016, I was like, where did all these gay and trans people come from? And I was like, oh, that's right. Our foods and the vaccines.
Dude, yeah. Okay, so plastics from the 1950s, when they started heavily using plastics, you can see where men's testosterone, on average, has gone down 1%. Every single year. We are literally half the men that our grandfathers were.
Yeah. Well, that's
on average. And so there's that aspect, right? And then them introducing soy into our diets like fucking crazy. And then the GMOs, and then the what's the other one? Birth control, where all of those hormones just get into the water. Yeah. Yes. And then hormone disruptors, you're right, and things like that. And so it's just an attack on life.
So, I've said this, and I've got, again, around 2016, I started losing all kinds of friends, clients, had family members arguing with me, because I say radical shit. I don't say shit for a narrative. I say it because I'm trying to preserve the truth, right? I don't have a problem with you being gay or trans. I don't have a problem with that at all. I've got a problem with the government turning you gay and trans. I got a big problem with that, right? And you being stupid enough to believe that it's some virtuous thing, and believing that you're somehow oppressed when you've had parades for the last 30 years. I don't have a tattoo artist parade. We don't have podcast parades. And we know
we should.
Yeah. Well, we should have a podcast parade. But we know the gays have ran the world for centuries, right? The transgender thing, it's not new. You go look back at monarchs, they were trans. A lot of the monarchs, the queens, were actually men, right? There's photos of it. There's historical data written on it. And so, now it's like a modern day Sodom,
because it was a cult back then, because of those fucking the royalty. They were doing things to like subvert nature and to subvert it's a perversion of God. I mean, I'm sorry, all my gay and trans listeners right now, I love you guys, but you're literally going against nature. Nature is man and woman and having kids. And my best friend is gay, so I'm sorry, but it's a perversion of nature, and it's fine. Like, and there are some folks that I think are literally born gay, and that's fine too.
Absolutely.
And there's
why
literally people that are born that, and this is a tragic. They feel that they were born in the wrong body, and their brain is telling them, "Hey, I feel like I should have been a woman." You know, and for every one of those people that is supposed to be this many in a population, I say, whatever we're in right now, whether this is a simulation or we're on a fucking donut, hollow earth status, or if we're on a pancake, or if we're on a rock flying through space, whatever it is, you get to own you. You're in charge of you. You are in charge of your own life. And if you want to do whatever you want to your genitals and dress the way you want, that's totally fine with me. But I do have a problem with them pushing it on kids. And I do have a problem with what you were saying before, is like them pushing this agenda where they're not just saying like, hey, be nice to trans people. They're saying, hey, maybe you're trans. Hey, maybe everybody's trans. Hey, do you feel a little weird right now? Like, talking to kids, man, when they're like you said, when you were younger, you're having anxiety and stuff, like, that's fucking normal. People have fucking anxiety. People are like fucking anxious. They have like hormones are rushing through your body. You're changing, you're growing, you're maturing, your brain is starting to like fucking form into what it's going to be. And they tell you, hey, do you feel weird right now? Do you feel different? Do you feel like, oh, and they put you in these fucking hellhole prisons that they call schools. And there's like how many fucking students per teacher, right? And then you're just sort of ignored, and you're just kind of like, you're just going along to get along until maybe you say like, maybe I want to wear a dress. And then you get attention. And then people start praising you. And then people say you're special. Then people say you're different. Then, you know, it's really fucking insidious, dude. It's dark as fuck.
I disagree in the sense that I believe that there is a percentage of homosexuality in nature that's just the way that it is, right? It's like, and you can go back to ancient times, like with indigenous people, and
you say you disagree that there's a percentage of them?
I think that nature naturally produces in
nature. Okay, you were saying that you disagree that I said that it's a perversion of nature. Okay, well, I get you. I know. I'm just saying
what I think
for life to reproduce life is what I'm saying.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But what I think is nature produces a certain population of homosexual people, and like that's what they are.
Nature is interesting. Nature is diverse. There are people that are born with both genitals. Like, I can't explain that.
Hermaphrodites,
right? There's people that are born. There's fucking people that are literally born with checker patterns. Have you seen those folks? And there's actual chimeras that have two sets of like unique DNA inside of them. There's crazy fucking shit, man. And I can't explain it, but I can say that I don't want to say normal, but there's a majority of people, and if there weren't, then guess what? Humanity wouldn't exist, because we need people to reproduce.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. But back in like ancient times, a lot of different cultures celebrated the homosexuals because they were so rare, and they believed them to be, you know, like high priests or priestesses or whatever, that were able to be in two worlds. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I know that
we're the fucking Greeks, dude. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The Greeks were fucked up. They're just like, we're going to war. Well, this isn't a place for women. Let's bring a boy with us.
Yeah. Well, that's man perverting nature again. Like, you know, whatever happened in my view, I'm like this. If you're an adult and you're with another consenting adult, do whatever the fuck you want.
Not my problem.
As long as it doesn't affect me or children or animals. Once you start crossing these boundaries,
even animals, dude, I'm sorry. I think animals are property. Like, I think I own my dog, and I should be able to do whatever the fuck I want to my dog. I know that sounds fucked up, but for you to come to my property with a gun and tell me what I can do with my dog, it's a fucked up thing, man. I'm not saying you should be able to fuck your dog, or you should, because it's fucked up, but I don't know. I don't know. That's a weird one.
But I'm just saying, like, we like, cause like I look at like animals is like they have the consciousness of infants, whether they're alligators that rip your hands off or not. They don't
Okay,
have.
but in the same way, though, that we're saying that we shouldn't have laws against somebody aborting a baby, I think it's the same way. It's like you can't. I don't think you should be able to have laws that tell people what they can or can't do with their dog.
Well,
I don't know.
I definitely think that we should have a law that allows people to fuck people up that fuck animals or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
oh, this guy's fucking
I
animals.
think
Like,
people need to get punched more.
yeah. Oh, dude. Hey, you know what? It's amazing. Like that's the difference between like me and a lot of people around me. It's like when you get punched often or have been punched multiple times in your life, you see the world from a different lens. And I'm not
See if you
saying,
can see this crooked ass nose. How many times?
oh yeah, my nose is crooked too. Yeah. It's just like I'm not saying we should punch people, but in the same token, like even like ancient societies, like so much of the shit that has been, you know, supported by political correctness is because people don't get checked by other people right now. You know, like if like let's say that's why like prison's a good example. It's like that's like kind of ancient laws. Like if you do certain things, you're gonna get fucked up, dude. Right? Like um and you know, if you were in part of an ancient society and one of our family members, you and me are cousins, and my brother's out doing horrible shit because he's one of the best hunters and he's one of the greatest warriors, and he thinks that he can just bully everyone, eventually the tribal council is going to come to us and say, hey, you got to talk to your brother because, or we're all going to talk to him and you don't want us to talk to him. All right, so we talk to our brother and he listens for about a month and then he goes back to punking people out again. Then the tribal council comes up to us with a couple of spears and says, you guys got to take him out into the forest because he's your family member. And if you don't take him into the forest, we're taking all of you out into the forest. You got to deal with him, right? And I like to think that it didn't even have to get to that point because people knew they were allowed to say shit to other people. That's not right. Don't do that. If you do that again, we're going to have to check your ass. And people would get checked publicly and they would be on their best behavior. I don't think the Wild West was full of all these murders like they say it was. I think motherfuckers minded their P's and Q's, and every once in a while you had an outlaw, right? Every once
Well,
in a
and
while.
that's why you know those people's names. Someone like
Yeah.
Billy the Kid or something. Like
Yeah.
you said, yeah, they were probably the people that were. Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly think that's where I want to be at some point. Like I'm an anarchist in the way that I think that there shouldn't be rules, but there shouldn't be rulers. I think that there should be like small, tight knit communities where we all decide like, hey, Grandpa so and so, he's lived a fucking long life. He's the wisest man I know. He's honest as shit. I think that he should be like our wisdom or our elder. Right. And
we need councils. We need
councils.
a council.
Yeah.
We need
So
a
like
council.
the smartest 10 people, 10 ladies, 10 men, and an old man. And he's our arbitrator for like things that come up, things like that. And we all respect him. We all know him. And we've all agreed that this guy is our arbitrator, something like that. And have these communities, like you're right. And I, as much as I like, I'm very anti-democratic just because like gang rape is democracy. Like mob rule is democracy. Lynching somebody is democracy, right? But I think that if you are a tight-knit, small enough community and you have a like-minded culture, you can have these little democratic like communes basically that can be self-sustaining and that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, well, if you had,
I want a million little Liechtensteins.
Yeah, you have like a tribal council with term limits and cutoffs on financial donations, and people being held accountable. Like back in like
Or
ancient
fuck
civilization.
financial donations. We don't even need money, dude.
Yeah.
If you have a small enough tight knit community, like we just fucking grow food and we take care of each other. This guy has chickens. I bake bread. Like we fucking make sure everyone's fed.
Back
Like,
in like ancient times, like Mayans and Aztecs and things like that, before it got all super corrupted, the legends were that the rulers actually were held under more scrutiny than the civilians. The rulers actually had to come out and do like extreme, like bodily sacrifices, like cutting themselves and showing their allegiance to their community and things like that. They were held under a microscope.
man. That was
Because they wanted
also
clear rulers. They wanted clear rulers,
Yeah,
but they didn't
the
want
Native
corruption.
Americans were like that too. Like
Yes.
their chief and things like that. At any time, they could just say "fuck you" to their chief, but they didn't because he was like the bravest, the wisest. He had fought in battles. He had shown that he cares about people. A lot of times, the chief was the poorest person because they would literally give everything they had. If someone like said, "Hey, I need shoes," he would have to take his shoes off and give them to them. Like, and that was like, because you are taking care of the community. It's this interesting thing too, because I'd heard that about like Mongol Khans as well, that like, at least with the other elite, I guess, with the other Khanates and things like that, they like the actual Khan would probably be the brokest among them because he would have to give in order to like keep his I don't know. Yeah, because there was, like you said, like scrutiny. And that's the way it should be, dude. Like, I've heard enough smart folks talk about this. I think that this is a funny and interesting idea. Like, every single time that, like, Congress gets together for a vote, they should be, like, sitting in the middle of a room and there should be militias surrounding them, pointing loaded fucking guns at their head.
Dude,
like, what are you voting for? How many billions are you giving to Ukraine when we have like homeless, starving vets on the side of the road? Why are we giving money to Ukraine? I want more details on that. Like, how much are we giving to Israel? Why?
We had a revolutionary war over a 2% T-tax a couple hundred years ago. Like, just think about that. A 2% T-tax started a war. Like, where the fuck are we at now, right? So, I'm looking at society right now, and I'm going to have to wrap this up in a few minutes, but I'm looking at society right now as basically who I used to be, the out-of-control family member that needed a fucking wake-up call, right? Our civilization has become so politically correct and so uncheckable in order for these politicians to prevail and make all this money and fuck all our children, that our society is literally addicted to the foods, the accessories, the clothing, the pop culture. We're literally like fucking out of control drug addicts right now. And our society needs to fucking crash and burn and have that collective wake up call in our collective consciousness. Like, we literally, it took 6 years of prison for me to fucking get it, right? 6 years and about 100 ass kickings to get it, right? That's how dense I
think
was.
The scary part of it is that I think that this crash is manufactured.
Absolutely.
And I think that the people that are trying to get us to crash, like if this was a real crash, I would say we fucking need it and maybe we'll learn something from it. But goddamn, I think that this is just the elite just crashing us again so that they can steal even more. They can take all the property. I think that's really 100%. What they're going to do, man. And
100%. But check this out. There's a few ways that I look at it. When I was 8 years old in my grandparents' house watching the news, I instantly had this ball of hate fill my stomach, and I hated the newscasters. I knew at a young age, these people are fake. I hate them. All they talk about is bad shit. I knew when I was 8 years old, so almost 40 years ago, that something was wrong on this fucking planet, right? So what's happened in the last 2 years is a byproduct of what we've allowed to happen over decades, right? So I agree with you. Yes, the elites think they're going to benefit. They're not, and I can prove that too. But we need a social collapse, because that's the only way people are going to fucking get it. And what's going to happen is it's going to separate the wolves from the sheep. And throughout history, man has tried to conquer the world numerous times. He always fails. We live in a system, a dimension of what the occult will tell you is balance. I don't believe that. I believe it's more like 60-40. It's 60% good, 40% bad, or maybe even 70% good and 30% bad. And natural law is what leads me to believe that, because I can take a candle into a pitch black room and illuminate it, but I cannot take darkness into a light room and cause any effect on it. And that's nature showing me that the good outweighs the bad. And these guys are going to fail. They're going to try their bullshit. They're going to fail. Like, you want to look at who these people are. They're a bunch of skinny, elderly, trust fund baby pedophiles. And they're running a bunch of illusions on people, and people are buying it. They're getting swept up in their timelines and their ideas and these consciousnesses, their spells that they've cast on humanity. But if you walk enough, which is where I was going to round up to earlier with conspiracies, how we can see how dark humanity is. Well, that means there's a polar opposite. And if spirituality can get this dark, well, spirituality can get this light. And the only way for you to find out who you are and what God is for you to go within and do those ancient practices of meditation and breath work and fasting and dieting and exercise and trying to eliminate as much of the toxic junk that is thrust upon us in this modern society. We need to understand that the conspiracies were a teacher to us, that there is a polar opposite to this life, and that we have a collective consciousness, a communal consciousness, and we have an individual consciousness. We're living in two different worlds. Some could say three. We have a dream world too. So we have three states of consciousness, and we can learn from the dream world as well, right? There's dream interpreters out there. So this is all a fucking illusion to a certain extent, because the reason why the Old Testament and New Testament are very different books to me is I didn't like the God of the Old Testament. I thought he was a piece of shit. I think he was a human. Personally, my Lord, my King, right? Go kill these people and steal all their gold. That's some shit a man would do. Christ was a different figure, right? Christ was so spiritually aware that 3 wizards from the Far East came to visit him on the night of his birth, right? Christ was so spiritually aware that even when faced with death, his followers came up to him, "Don't go there, Jesus, they're going to kill you." He's like, "What are you talking about, homie? I'm eternal. I'm not scared of the 3D. That's where people need to get. And if more people can get there, then the fear vibration is going to lower." And keep in mind, how old are you?
34.
Okay, so I'm almost 13 years older than you. See, I've been dropping knowledge on motherfuckers since MySpace, right? And I was on, what the fuck was the other one before that? Or no, what? Yeah, it was MySpace. And I've been dropping shit on motherfuckers since MySpace. And back then, almost nobody was a conspiracy theorist. Now look at it. Look at it. Our own fucking parents are starting to wake up. Our grandparents are starting to wake up.
Yeah, this has been the biggest
something.
mind control, psyop, crazy bullshit of our lifetime. This was way bigger than 9/11. And I tell you what, dude,
And who's behind
yes,
it?
they've exerted a lot of control, and yes, they've convinced a lot of people to poison themselves, unfortunately. But holy shit, dude, I'm telling you, this has been more red pilling for more people than any time ever.
Science was behind this massive failure. Again, Science again. Don't question. Trust the science. Well, I trust.
I am the science.
I am.
Yeah, Fauci.
Yeah. Again, modern science is, and I'm not saying all scientists are bad. That's not what I'm saying. But
scientism is bad. When you say that you are the absolute authority and that you cannot be questioned, no, anyone that says that, anyone, scientist, religious figure, anyone, fuck you.
So nature shows us that hard work, perseverance, intelligence, aware of your surroundings, health, this is all beneficial and fortuitous. The evil that we are up against are a bunch of overindulgent, lazy, fucking scared. They're all full of fear-based pedophiles. That you think they're gonna fucking be able to win this? It violates the laws of nature.
Jeremy, why? So it's a religion thing for them, I guess, as well.
It's a cult.
But what is up with the fucking pedophilia? Why?
Okay.
What the fuck is that? Is that another like perversion of nature?
I'm going to give you my I had an epiphany after a meditation. I have a lot of epiphanies after meditation. Guys, if you're listening, get into meditation, then get into visual meditations. The shit it works. I had PTSD. It went away 7 days into my meditation practice. I'm not saying that's what'll happen with you. You stick up, but I did the 10-day intensive meditation, the monastery meditation. With what I believe with the pedophilia thing is these people are the descendants of the Nephilim and Raphaim or Anunnaki, right? The Khazarians, the Canaanites, the Philistines.
At least they say they are.
The Phoenicians. Well, they are probably the descendants of a bad faction of that group.
Yeah.
That probably lives underground to this day. And that's why they're building all the dams and boring all the holes in the tunnels, which they've been doing for centuries. But they've been doing it for centuries. But the practices of the giants was fucking their creation, man, right? Small women, right? And creating men of renown. And they also ate man, right? So what are children? What are adults to children? We're like giants. So these people are continuing the practice of the Nephilim. They're eating the people and fucking the people. Unfortunately, the people are children. And that's the practice. To me, this is the only thing that makes sense in it all, is they're continuing the practice. And the Nephilim is also just, a blanket statement for the gods, or, the Nordic gods or the Hindu gods, or all these what from around the world perceived gods, right? Even the Mayans had them, the Incas and all these people, they had these giants in their culture, and the giants were out of control. And that's why they chased them from the earth and they killed them, because they were fucking their women and eating their people. And I believe that it goes back to that time. And if you listen to, the fallen angels were the descendant, they left heaven with Satan, right? And they fell upon the earth and they taught man about perversions and all this crazy shit. And I just think that they're continuing that lineage in that way.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Who the fuck was that I talked to? We talked a little bit about, how much credence you put into things like adrenochrome and things like that. And they were basically saying that like children haven't experienced all of these traumas and that they are pure. And so that it's something that like when they still have all these chemicals that are full, their brain is full, and they haven't experienced all this crazy shit. So if you get one and you fucking torture one, it's like a giant dump of chemicals.
Let me just tell you, like, natural law works for better or worse a lot of times.
Yeah.
So as somebody who did years of organic farming, and I still love, if I can, and I like to help my friends, I helped my friend just recently build a hoop house, a greenhouse. And I helped another person map out a garden at his house in another state. And microgreens are sprouted vegetables. You know what sprouts are, right?
Yep.
So microgreens are basically the infant of vegetables. Well,
Yeah.
they have more nutrition in them and energy in them than an actual
Yeah.
full-grown kale
Because
plant.
they're still fucking growing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they're
so
full of fucking life.
full of life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
you're right.
so then
Yeah.
you also, like, another weird like, you go back to ancient times, you had to sacrifice a virgin. That was the purest offering, right? Um, and it's amazing to me that all these fucking idiots can't see that back in the day, the same people that are running the world today are the same descendants of these monarchs that all had wizards, astrologers,
Every
magicians,
single president has been
assassins.
related. Every
Yes,
single president, except for one, supposedly, every single president is blood related to some British monarch.
yes.
You're like,
But
what the fuck? When people hear that, they go, wait, what?
all of the
Huh?
monarchs had wizards in their courts. So, of course, they still have that now. Look at the symbols of all these corporations. Look at the symbol for CERN. Look at Google. Look at Gmail. All of this is symbology. It's occult symbology. The monarchs are still practicing magic to this day. And, you know, people ignore that shit in nature too, like nature, for better or worse. More, to my
Well, that
knowledge.
was brilliant when they gave us democracies because then you got rid of the monarchies. But you didn't. You didn't really.
Well, no.
Like the people that are really in charge, they didn't want to be in front of the throne anyways. And so now they're just running the show and they're letting you vote between asshole and turd sandwich, between Coke and Pepsi, but they own them both.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. And you get to vote between a lion and a tiger, and they're looking at you.
And so
like,
you never get to see who's oppressing you. Because, I mean, that was the thing that was the flaw in monarchy, is that if shit was going bad, I knew who the fuck to blame.
Well, even the papacy, you have the white pope and the black pope. Nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
Right? Santos Bonacci talks a lot about that, if you guys want to listen to his talks in the papacy. But yeah, man, and nature's weird like that. To my knowledge, more little boys get molested, but more women get raped. Well, these women say we live in rape culture. Well, who's teaching this shit to the little boys? Where's the mothers at? Right? Somebody's learning this behavior. I would like to know how many rapists.
And you can only
your
say
children.
that if you don't include the prison population. Well, I mean, I still don't know if it's more, but it's a lot.
No,
it's a lot.
Let me tell you. Okay, so that at least in California, rape is frowned upon. That's not motherfuckers that
in prison.
People. Yeah, where I was at, if a big dude was raping somebody, a lot of people, number one, they don't want to hear that shit, and number two, they don't want to they don't want that shit to proliferate in prison. So you get two little motherfuckers with a knife stab the fuck out of this motherfucker in the shower area, so people don't do that shit. Rape is frowned upon. Now, do I think there's homosexuality in the prisons? Yeah, for sure. But rape is in California, it's frowned upon. At least back when I was.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
that's good
when
to
I
know.
was in there, it was frowned upon. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. I never saw it happen. I heard about it happening, but I never saw it happen.
Yeah, I knew a couple guys that were quiet and different after, and they didn't talk about that shit. I don't know. It's gross. It's awful and terrible.
I heard about it. I didn't see it. Right?
All right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Jerry, we've been on here for a couple hours.
Well, let me just wrap it up with this.
Yeah.
For all the conspiracy theorists out there, you're scared, you're nervous. What's going to happen next? Again, dude, go into the spirit. Meditation. If you go within, you never go without. If you know yourself, nothing can fucking touch you. The military can be on your doorstep, ready to put a bullet in your brain. And you'll be like, dude, what the fuck are you waiting for? I could have killed myself 10 times by now. Pull the fucking trigger. You're eternal. This isn't game over. We probably do live in a biological simulation, like a video game. And
or if it is game over, it's just like, then you're like, press continue. And then you just like,
if you are self-aware and you don't get fooled by it, You're going to ascend. You're going to level up. You're not going to possibly come back to this shit show. And if you do, your lifetime will be better. You have to learn from your mistakes. We all got to heal from our generations. We all got to, our family members, right? Like, dude, racism is the fall guy for classism. Oppression has been happening to poor people of all colors since the beginning of time. Once you get to a certain level, like some guy tried to tell me, oh, black people can't be racist. They don't have any power. Oh, yeah. Well, who the fuck is the head of the CDC and the WHO? Tedros of Africa. He's black. Obama passed a lot of laws. He dropped more missiles than any other fucking president. Those are black people. They had a lot of power. If you're oppressed in 2022, look in the mirror. That's the man who's keeping you down, motherfucker. Straight out, right? So you know yourself. It's all ancient. It's the pyramid. It's the Trinity. Mind, body, spirit. Balance that shit out. I had all kinds of mental problems and this and that. I was on pills and pharmaceuticals. And then I changed my life. I went into the spirit. Like I said, we're living in two worlds. The communal world, civilization, and our own world. That's two different sets of consciousness. And then you have a higher consciousness. If motherfuckers get involved in the spirit and stop, I'm only involved in conspiracies by proxy because I've been involved in it for so long. These days I'm into, I'm studying different shit a lot of times. Shit comes up on my feed so I can stay aware of current shit, but I don't even really study this shit anymore. I just know how the game is played. I've studied it so deeply. If I could have a double master's degree, I probably fucking have it. But I'm more into like the more spiritual aspects of it now because that's how you break the fucking matrix, dude. You realize that the matrix, even the matrix is under control, right? Like the matrix is subservient to the laws of nature, right? We're like in a simulation within a simulation.
Yeah. Once you realize, I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing, but once you realize we are in a game, then you realize that there's rules to this game, and you realize that you can use the rules to this game, and that it's something more than a game, though. But it's fascinating. Yes, there are natural laws in whatever this is, and then in that way too, it empowers you. And it also helps you not to hate anymore because you understand that someone like Klaus Schwab or any of these like Rothschilds or this or that, they're playing their part. And I think that they're part of the simulation.
And they were once,
I don't even think they're not humans. They're not us.
Infants. They were once infants, and they probably went through the satanic cult gang raking ritual as small children.
If they are natural. Or if they're not, because sometimes, dude, I really think that they're literally, these people like archons or whatever you want to call them, they're literally just part of the simulation. They're part of the lesson. They're part of like, and they're like they're Koopa.
Well, you know
right?
what? We could, if we.
I don't know if that's true or not, but
if we do a podcast in the Millennial Reign, I'll get into what the, according to the timelines of what I believe the Millennial Reign is, if, because, everybody's Tartaria, which, that was a real civilization. But I also think that even that might be somewhat of a co-opting of something even bigger.
Well, it's something, and then so many things get thrown under that umbrella of Tartaria, where... Yeah, I'm skeptical of the whole Tartaria. I love Tartaria and I want it to be real, but there's parts of it where I'm like, I don't think so, dude.
The Millennial Reign is the only thing that made sense of Tartaria for me. And
I would absolutely love to do that. We need to, let's schedule that one. Let's fucking make it happen.
One more thing. Like, when you look at the psychology of a serial killer, right? What we know about their childhood, most of them were sexually abused. They witnessed all types of violence. Well, that's what satanic cults are. So essentially, these people become brainwashed and controlled, and they're coming from families that have been conjuring and summoning demons for thousands of years. I know how good I got at tattooing in 20 years. I can imagine how good a cult could get at summoning demons in 2,000 years, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, people need to realize that it's something like you have to look at someone like Charles Manson. Okay, he's considered this evil son of a bitch. Goddamn, man! If you look at his childhood, he was like raped, he was abused, he was this, he was that. He was picked at a very early age, and then he's been manipulated by our government and by the CIA for his entire fucking life. He was one of these MK Ultra fucking abused. Like
one of the most fascinating books I ever read, and I didn't even want to read it. Like, people kept telling me to read it. I was like, man, I don't want to read that bullshit. I don't care about the Manson family. I know about those guys, right? There's a book called Chaos. It took the guy 20 years to write. It was one of the most incredible books I ever read, and it breaks down corruption on all levels, and it tells you about why Charles Manson was Charles Manson, basically. And leads you, it with almost definitive proof, lets you know that, yeah, he was trained while he was in jail. He was trained while he was out of jail on parole. He was given free drugs. He was allowed to violate parole over 100 times. He was more valuable to somebody on the outside.
I'm so curious about Charles Manson. I have a fascination about him. I should, because the only thing I know about him is that my dad used to sell him drugs. My dad was the one that used to sell him acid. My dad used to hang out with him and the Beach Boys. And I know there's some weird fucking connections. Yes. Like, man, I wonder if my dad was MK Ultra, or maybe he was a goddamn CIA agent. I don't think so, but maybe.
I literally think the boomers are suffering from MK Ultra because they all started out as hippies, and they all feel like they did their part, but they sold out to the machine, right?
They sold out to the machine, or they didn't know that they were part of the machine the whole fucking time.
Right?
Yeah.
They
were doing exactly what was expected of them.
Yeah, but they thought because they were hippies, they fought the machine, and it's like, no, motherfuckers, you helped bring it into existence.
It's the same thing with Antifa today. They think they're fighting oppression. They think they're doing this, that, and the other. Yeah. Or those morons that are throwing cans of soup at fucking Van Gogh. Like, they think that they're fighting the man, and like, you are the fucking man. Do you understand that you are doing exactly what you're being commanded and told and manipulated to do?
Yeah, you could get Chaos on Audible and listen to it on audio. There's also another really good book that I think goes hand in hand with Chaos, and it's by a guy named Dave McGowan. And Chaos was written by Tom O'Neill. Dave McGowan wrote a book called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and it talks about
both of these CIA. Books I've wanted to read. Yeah.
Yes, both of those books go hand in hand, bro. Check them out.
Yeah.
Hey, and thank you for having me on this podcast. You guys can find me at Esoteric Gladiator Podcast on Instagram, or just on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Awesome, brother. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Let's do it again. I'm really fascinated about Christ's millennial reign, so let's fucking make it happen.
Right on, man. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.